The first thing Nora did when she walked into work was check the parking lot, not because she was paranoid, because 3 years of being stalked had trained her body to do it before her brain caught up. Eyes sweeping the rows of cars, counting the ones she didn't recognize, noting the gray Ford F-150 parked by the dumpster, the one with the license plate she'd memorized because it appeared at least twice a week. It was there today. Of course it was. Nora pulled into a spot as far from it as she could, grabbed her bag from the passenger seat, and walked into the clinic with the steady, unhurried pace of someone who hadn't just seen her ex-boyfriend's car and felt her stomach drop to her. Shoes. The clinic smelled like antiseptic, and dog shampoo and the particular kind of fear that comes from a room full of animals who don't want to be there. Nora clocked in at the front desk, said good morning to Maria the receptionist, and walked back to the treatment area where Ben was already setting up for the day's surgeries. Morning, Ben said. He was 34, married, had a golden retriever named Biscuit, and was the only man at the clinic who'd ever asked Nora if she was okay and actually waited for the answer. You look tired. Didn't sleep great, Nora said. It was true. It was always true. She put on her scrubs, washed her hands, and started prepping the first patient, a tabby cat named Mr. Whiskers who needed dental work. The cat was calm, purring, and Nora found herself breathing slower as she worked, the way she always did when she was around animals. They didn't threaten you. They didn't text you at 2 a.m. They didn't sit in your parking lot for 40 minutes with the engine running. The morning was routine. Spay, neuter, ear infection, a dog who'd eaten a sock. Nora moved through it on autopilot, her hands knowing what to do while her mind kept drifting to the parking lot, to the gray Ford, to the question of whether Travis was still out there, or if he'd gotten bored and left. At 11, she went to the waiting room to call back the next appointment. A man was sitting in the corner chair, wearing a hoodie and baseball cap, scrolling on his phone. He wasn't a client. He had no animal with him, and he'd been there when Nora arrived at 8. She'd seen him before. His name was Jake, and he was Travis's friend, the one who did his dirty work, because Travis himself couldn't be bothered to show up and pretend to be a normal human being. Nora called the client's name. The man with the dog stood up. Jake didn't move. He didn't look up. He just kept scrolling, and Nora knew, with the certainty of someone who'd lived this for 1,000 days, that he was texting Travis right now, telling him she was in the building, that she was alone, that the coast was clear. She went back to the treatment area and told herself it was fine. He wasn't doing anything. Sitting in a waiting room wasn't a crime. Being creepy wasn't a crime. She'd called the police before, twice, and both times they'd said the same thing. Without a direct threat or physical harm, there was nothing they could do. Keep a log, they'd said. Save the texts. If it escalates, call us back. It had escalated. It was always escalating, but never quite enough. At 3, Ben walked her to her car. He did this most days, not because Nora asked him to, but because he'd seen the gray Ford, he'd seen Jake, and he wasn't an idiot. They walked across the parking lot together, and Nora kept her eyes forward, and she didn't look at the Ford. And when they reached her car, Ben said, "You want me to follow you home?" "No," Nora said. "I'm fine. Thanks, Ben." He hesitated. Then he said, "You know I know, but I'm fine, really." He nodded. He walked back to the clinic. Nora got in her car, locked the doors immediately, and checked the rearview mirror. The Ford was still there. She pulled out of the spot, drove to the exit, and didn't look back. He followed her for 3 blocks. Then he turned off. She knew the routine. He'd report back to Travis, tell him she went straight home, tell him there were no men in her car, no men at her apartment. It was a performance, and she'd been performing it for 3 years. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor of a building in Highlands, above a bookstore that closed at 6. She parked in the back, used the key fob to get in the side door, and climbed the stairs. She checked the peephole before unlocking her door. She checked the locks twice. Deadbolt chain. Then a 3rd time, because old habits were stronger than logic. Her cat, Mochi, met her at the door, weaving between her ankles and meowing for food. Nora fed him, changed into sweatpants, and sat on the couch with the lights off. She did this most days, sat in the dark, because if the lights were off, maybe Travis couldn't see in. Maybe he'd think she wasn't home. Maybe he'd leave. Her phone buzzed. She knew who it was before she looked. "Tell that vet to keep his hands off you. Next time I'll break more than his fingers." Nora stared at the text. She deleted it. She deleted all of them, eventually, but she always read them first, because not reading them felt like ignoring a fire alarm. She'd learned that the hard way. Ignoring Travis had never made him go away. It had only made him louder. 3 years. 3 years since she'd left. 3 years since Lila had shown up at Travis's apartment with a U-Haul and a baseball bat and said, "We're leaving now, and if he tries to stop us, I'm calling the police." 3 years since Nora had stood in that apartment with a cast on her arm. Travis had pushed her down the stairs during a fight about a male coworker, of all things, and realized that if she stayed, he would eventually kill her. She'd left. She'd changed her number. She'd moved twice, and still he found her. Still the texts came. Still the gray Ford appeared in her parking lot. Still Jake sat in waiting rooms and coffee shops and grocery store aisles watching. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Lila. "Hey, my cousin's gym is having a thing tonight. BBQ, beers, people who aren't total losers." "You're coming," Nora typed back. "I'm tired." "You're always tired. That's not a reason." "It's been 3 years, Nora. You haven't been on a date. You haven't been to a party. You haven't done anything that isn't work and home and work. I'm not asking. I'm telling. Be ready at 7. I'll pick you up. Nora stared at the text. She thought about the gray Ford, about Jake, about the text she'd just deleted. She thought about sitting in this dark apartment for another night, another week, another year, waiting for the next threat, the next car, the next time she'd have to delete a message and pretend it didn't matter. She typed, "Fine, but I'm leaving if it's weird. You're not leaving. It's going to be fun. And there's this guy at the gym, tall, quiet, cooks a mean brisket. You might like him." Nora almost said no. Almost typed, "I'm not ready," and put the phone down and went back to sitting in the dark. But then she looked at Mochi, who was curled up on the couch watching her, and she thought, I am 27 years old. I should be able to go to a BBQ without being afraid. She typed, 7, don't be late. She put the phone down. She stood up. She walked to the window and pulled back the curtain, just enough to look at the parking lot below. The gray Ford was gone. For now. Nora took a shower. She got dressed. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman with dark circles under her eyes and a scar on her wrist from the cast, and a haircut she hadn't changed in 3 years because she was afraid if she looked different. Travis would get angry. She picked up her keys. She checked the locks, once, not 3 times, just once, and she walked out the door. She didn't know that tonight. At a gym in Rhino, she would meet a man who was 6'5" and quiet and had his own scars. She didn't know that the next 5 months would change everything. She only knew that she was tired of sitting in the dark, and for one night, she was going to try the light. The gym was in Rhino, in a warehouse that had probably been something industrial before Denver got cool and turned everything into breweries and yoga studios and fight gyms. The sign on the door said Delgado Fight Academy in faded letters, and the smell that hit Nora when she walked in was sweat and disinfectant and old leather. And it was not, by any stretch of the imagination, her scene. Lila was already 3 beers in and talking to a guy with cauliflower ear who was explaining, at length, the difference between a guillotine and a Darcy choke. Nora found a spot by the wall, as far from the center of the room as she could get, and did what she always did in unfamiliar places. She located the exits. Front door, side door by the bathrooms, a roll-up garage door at the back, probably locked. 3 ways out. Good. She was holding a beer. She wasn't drinking and pretending to look at her phone when he walked over. He was tall, obviously tall. The kind of tall that made people turn their heads, and he was built like someone who'd been built for a purpose. Broad shoulders and long arms and hands that looked like they could crush a beer can without trying. But he moved quietly, like someone who'd learned that being big meant being careful, and when he stopped in front of her, he didn't loom. He left space. "Hey," he said. His voice was low, not the performative deep voice some guys used, just low. "I'm Marcus. You look like you could use some water instead of that beer you're not drinking." Nora blinked. "Is it that obvious?" "The bottle's still sweating. You haven't touched it since you got here. And you've checked the exits 4 times since I walked over." He didn't say it like an accusation. He said it like an observation. The way you'd say, "It's cold outside. I'm not hitting on you. I just figured if you're this uncomfortable, you might want something to do with your hands that isn't a phone." He held out a bottle of water. Nora took it. Their fingers brushed, and she didn't flinch, which surprised her. She usually flinched when men touched her, even accidentally. "I'm Nora," she said. "Nice to meet you, Nora. You from Denver?" 3 years. Originally Wyoming. Small town. Population 1,200. Where everyone knows your business, and your grandma's business, and your dog's business. She paused. That came out more bitter than I intended. Marcus smiled. A small smile, just one corner of his mouth, like he didn't smile often and was still practicing. "I get it. I'm from Detroit. Same thing but with more snow and less cows." They talked. He asked her about work, and she told him about the clinic, about Mr. Whiskers the tabby and the dog who'd eaten a sock. And he listened. Really listened. The way people do, when they're not just waiting for their turn to talk. She asked him about the gym, and he said he trained here, had been for 2 years, was getting ready for his second pro fight. He said it matter-of-factly, no swagger, like he was talking about a hobby rather than a career where people paid to watch him get hit in the head. "You don't seem like a fighter," Nora said, and then immediately wished she could take it back. Marcus didn't seem offended. "I get that a lot. Most people expect me to be louder. Or meaner." He paused. "I learned a long time ago that if you're the biggest guy in the room, you have to be the calmest. Otherwise, people get scared." Nora thought about this. She thought about Travis, who was average height, average build, and had never been calm a day in his life. She thought about how Travis had used fear the way other people use passwords, as a way to lock things down, to keep what was his. "You okay?" Marcus said. "You went somewhere else." "Sorry, just thinking." She looked at him, at the scar above his left eyebrow, at the way he stood with his hands loose at his sides. Not fists, not pockets, just loose. "What do you do when you're not fighting?" "Cook. Read. My mom says I'm an old man trapped in a young man's body." He smiled again, that small, practiced smile. "I make a mean brisket, if that counts for anything." "It counts," Nora said, and she meant it. The party went on around them, people laughing, beer pong happening on a folding table. Someone had put on music that was too loud. But Nora didn't feel the need to check the exits anymore. She was still aware of them. She would always be aware of them. But she didn't feel like she was going to need them. At 10, Lila appeared, slightly drunk and very pleased with herself. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere." "Nora, we should go. I have an early shift tomorrow." Nora stood up. She'd been sitting for almost 2 hours, which was longer than she'd sat anywhere in public without scanning the room in months. "Yeah, okay." Marcus stood up too. "I'll walk you to your car." "It's dark out." Nora almost said no. almost said I'm fine. I can walk alone. I don't need an escort. But then she thought about the parking lot, about the gray Ford, about the texts, and she said, thanks. The parking lot was behind the gym, lit by a single flickering sodium light that made everything look orange and washed out. Nora's car was in the far corner, of course. She always parked as far away as possible, in case she needed to leave quickly without being seen. They walked in silence, and Nora was aware of Marcus beside her, not crowding her, not touching her, just there, a 6'5" wall of calm between her and whatever might be in the dark. They reached her car. Nora unlocked it, turned to say goodnight, and that was when she saw it. The gray Ford. It was at the far end of the parking lot, engine running, lights off. It had been there the whole time, she realized. She'd been so focused on the party, on Marcus, on not checking the exits, that she'd missed it. Her body did what it always did. Her hands went cold. Her breathing got shallow. She reached for the door handle and missed, her fingers brushing the metal, and she thought, he's been here the whole time. He saw me with Marcus. He knows, Marcus noticed. He didn't say what's wrong or are you okay. He just followed her gaze to the far end of the parking lot, saw the Ford and stepped slightly in front of her, not blocking her, not shielding her, just positioning himself between her and the car. His voice was still low, still calm. You know that car? Nora's mouth was dry. It's my ex, she said. He follows me. He's been following me for 3 years. Marcus didn't react. No anger, no surprise, no, I'll go talk to him. He just said, get in your car. Lock the doors. I'll stand here until you drive away. Nora got in. She locked the doors. She started the engine. Marcus stood by her car, hands loose at his sides, watching the Ford. The Ford's engine revved once, and then it pulled out of the lot. Slow, deliberate, like it was making a point. Nora drove home. She didn't look in the rearview mirror. She couldn't. She was in her apartment, lights off, Mochi purring on her lap, when the text came. She knew who it was before she picked up the phone. That 6'5" nigger you were with. You think he can protect you? Nobody can protect you. You're mine, Nora. Always have been. Nora stared at the text. She deleted it. She put the phone face down on the couch. She stroked Mochi's fur and felt the cat's warmth against her legs. And she thought, he knows. He saw us. And now it's not just me anymore. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a different number. Marcus, she realized, because she'd given it to him at the party, just in case, though she hadn't expected him to use it. You got home safe? Nora looked at the text. She looked at the deleted message from Travis, gone from her phone but not from her memory. She thought about the parking lot, about Marcus standing between her and the Ford, about the way he hadn't asked questions, hadn't gotten angry, had just said get in your car, lock the doors. She typed, yes, thank you. His reply came in 30 seconds. Anytime. Sleep well. Nora put the phone down. She didn't sleep well. She never slept well. But for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel like she was facing the dark alone. Nora didn't text Marcus back for 3 days. It wasn't that she didn't want to. It was that every time she picked up her phone, she thought about Travis's text, about the word he'd used, about the threat underneath it. And she thought, if I talk to him, Travis will find out. If I see him, Travis will hurt him. If I let myself like him, Travis will make me regret it. So she didn't text. She went to work, came home, fed Mochi, checked the locks 3 times, and sat in the dark. The gray Ford appeared twice more in the clinic parking lot. Jake sat in the waiting room for an hour on Tuesday, reading a magazine he wasn't reading. Ben walked her to her car every day, and Nora let him, because saying no felt like tempting fate. On Thursday, Marcus texted again. Just 1 line. You don't have to reply. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Nora stared at it. She thought about the men she'd known. Travis, who'd demanded attention and punished silence. The guys she'd dated after, who'd given up after 1 unanswered text. Ben, who was kind but married and safe and would never understand. And then there was Marcus, who'd said you don't have to reply, and meant it. She typed, I'm okay, mostly. His reply came fast. Want to get coffee? No pressure. Just coffee. She almost said no. Almost typed, I'm not ready, and put the phone down. But then she thought about the parking lot, about the Ford, about 3 years of sitting in the dark, and she typed, Saturday, 2 o'clock. There's a place on 32nd. They met at a coffee shop in Highland, a small place with mismatched chairs and a dog sleeping by the door. Nora got there first, chose a table by the window. She always chose tables by the window so she could see who was coming, and ordered a latte. Marcus walked in at 2:01, and the barista looked up, and the dog lifted its head, and Nora thought, he can't go anywhere without being noticed. It must be exhausting. He sat down across from her. He ordered black coffee. He didn't comment on her choice of table, or the way she kept glancing at the door. He just said, how's your week been? Normal, Nora said. Work, home, the usual. The usual meaning your ex showed up in your parking lot and his friend sat in your waiting room? Nora's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. How did you— I drove by your clinic on Tuesday. Saw the Ford. Saw the guy in the hoodie. I didn't approach them. I just watched for a while. He paused. Nora, I'm not going to pretend I know what to do here. I've never been in this situation. But I know you shouldn't be dealing with it alone. Nora set the cup down. She looked at him, at the scar above his eyebrow, at the hands folded on the table, hands that could break bones. but we're currently being very careful not to knock over the sugar shaker, and she thought, if I tell him, he'll look at me differently. He'll see the broken parts. He'll leave, but she told him anyway. She told him about Travis, about the 4 years, the yelling, the pushing, the time he'd thrown her phone against the wall because she'd texted a male coworker, about the stairs, the cast, the night Lila had shown up with a U-Haul, about the 3 years since, the texts, the cars, Jake in the waiting rooms, the men who'd talked to her at the grocery store and gotten threatening messages an hour later, about the police, the reports, the we can't do anything without evidence. She talked for 40 minutes. Marcus listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't say, I'll kill him, or he's a dead man, or any of the things she'd feared he'd say. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, you should come to the gym. Nora blinked. What? Not to fight, to train? Coach Ray teaches self-defense classes, basic stuff, situational awareness, how to get away from someone bigger than you. It's not about being able to beat him. It's about not feeling helpless. He paused. And I'll be there, not training with you, just around. If that makes you more comfortable. Nora thought about it. She thought about the parking lot, about the way her body had frozen when she saw the Ford, about the fact that if Travis ever actually grabbed her, she had no idea what to do. She thought about Mochi, about her job, about the life she'd built that was always one thread away from collapsing. Okay, she said. I'll try it. She went to the gym on Monday. The self-defense class was small. 4 women, all different ages, all with their own reasons for being there. Coach Ray was in his 50s, stocky, with a nose that had been broken at least twice, and he didn't waste time on inspirational speeches. First rule, he said, standing in the center of the mat. Nobody is coming to save you. Not the police, not your boyfriend, not me. If someone grabs you, your job is to create space and run. You are not here to win a fight. You are here to survive one. Nora learned to stand with her weight balanced, to keep her hands up, to use her voice as a weapon. No, and back off, loud enough to draw attention. She learned to break a wrist hold, to knee someone in the groin, to aim for the eyes and the throat, and the places that would buy her 3 seconds of running room. She was terrible at it. Her stance was wrong. Her punches were weak. She kept apologizing when she hit the pads. But Coach Ray didn't care. Again, he said, every time she messed up. And she did it again. Marcus was there, working the heavy bag at the far end of the gym, and every time Nora glanced over, he wasn't watching her. He was doing his own work, letting her have her space, and that meant more than if he'd been cheering her on. After class, she was sitting on the mat, drinking water, when Marcus came over. He didn't sit too close. He said, how do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, Nora said. Her arms ached. Her voice was hoarse from yelling, but also, like I could maybe yell loud enough to make someone hesitate. Is that stupid? It's not stupid, Marcus said. Hesitation is all you need. 3 seconds of hesitation is enough to run. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She didn't need to look at it to know who it was. She'd been getting texts all evening. Travis, somehow knowing she was at the gym, asking who she was with, what she was doing, why she was wasting her time learning to fight when she should be home where she belonged. She didn't open the text. She put the bag over her shoulder and said, can you walk me to my car? Always, Marcus said. They walked through the gym, past the heavy bags and the ring, and the guys lifting weights, and out into the parking lot. The night air was cold, Denver cold, the kind that got into your bones. Nora's car was in the far corner, as always. They were halfway there when Marcus stopped. Someone's in your car, he said. Nora looked. The passenger side window was down. The door was slightly ajar. And there, sitting in the driver's seat, was Jake. He saw them. He scrambled out of the car, hands up, the way you do when you've been caught. I wasn't doing nothing, just checking the locks. Travis said what? Marcus's voice was still low, still calm, but there was something underneath it now, something that made Jake take a step back. Nothing. I'm leaving. I'm gone. Jake practically ran to his car, a beat-up Honda parked by the dumpster, and peeled out of the lot. Nora stood by her car, her hands shaking. The door was open. The window was down. She'd locked it. She knew she'd locked it. He had a key, she said, more to herself than to Marcus. He made a copy. Or Travis did. They've been in my car. Marcus didn't say anything. He walked around the car, checked the back seat, the trunk, made sure nobody was hiding. Then he stood in front of Nora and said, I'm going to call a locksmith. Right now. And tomorrow we're going to the police. Not to report a threat. To report a break-in. That's a crime, Nora. They have to take that seriously. Nora looked at him. She thought about the police. About the reports. About the, we can't do anything. She thought about Jake in her car, about the keys, about the fact that Travis had access to her vehicle whenever he wanted. Okay, she said. Tomorrow. Marcus called the locksmith. He stood with her while they waited, his hands in his pockets, not touching her, not crowding her, just there. And Nora stood in the cold Denver night. And for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel like she was facing it alone. The locksmith changed the locks at 10:30. Marcus paid for it, over Nora's objections, and when she tried to Venmo him the money, he didn't accept the request. It's done, he said. Let it go. She didn't let it go. She was stubborn about independence, about not owing anyone anything, about being the kind of woman who could pay for her own locksmith, and her own coffee, and her own life. but Marcus didn't push. He just said, "It's done," and left it there. And Nora realized with a kind of quiet surprise that he wasn't trying to control her. He was just trying to help. The difference was new, and it was confusing. They went to the police station the next day. The officer who took the report was young, maybe 25, and he listened to Nora describe the break-in, the open door, the down window, Jake in the driver's seat, and he nodded and typed and said, "We'll file a report. But without footage or a positive ID, it's hard to pursue." "I know who it was," Nora said. "His name is Jake Morrison. He works for my ex-boyfriend, Travis Voss. He's been stalking me for 3 years. The officer looked up. "You have a restraining order?" "No." "Then I'd recommend getting one." "Without it, this is just a he said, she said. We can talk to Mr. Morrison, but he'll say he was in the area, or he thought it was his car, or any number of things." He handed Nora a card. "Here's the number for the DV unit. They can help you file for a TRO. Nora took the card. She'd heard it before. File a report, get a restraining order, document everything. She'd done all of it, once, 3 years ago, and nothing had happened. Travis had shown up to the hearing with a lawyer who'd called her a disgruntled ex-girlfriend with a vivid imagination. And the judge had said, "Come back when you have more evidence," and that had been the end of it. Outside the police station, Marcus said, "We'll get the evidence. The break-in is a start. Next time he shows up, we call them immediately. No more deleting texts. No more handling it alone." Nora looked at him. "You keep saying we, because it is we. You don't have to do this by yourself anymore." She wanted to believe him. She did. But there was a part of her, the part that had been pushed downstairs and threatened and followed for 3 years, that didn't believe anyone could stay. That didn't believe anyone would want to. She said, "Okay," and got in her car, and didn't check the rearview mirror. The next 2 weeks were a study in contrasts. Nora trained at the gym 3 times a week, and she got better. Her stance was less terrible. Her punches connected with the pads with a satisfying thwack. She could break a wrist hold without thinking about it. She and Marcus saw each other almost every day. Coffee after training, dinner at his apartment, walks in the park when the weather allowed. He was steady. He was calm. He didn't get angry when she flinched at a loud noise or checked the locks 3 times or had a nightmare and called him at 2 in the morning. But he also started doing things that made her uncomfortable. He showed up at the clinic one afternoon, unannounced. "Just to make sure you got to your car okay?" He bought her a personal safety alarm, loud, keychain-sized, the kind that could be heard from a block away, and left it on her kitchen counter without asking. He suggested she move to a different apartment complex, somewhere with better security. And when she said she liked her apartment, he said, "I'm just worried about you." It was the "I'm just worried about you" that did it. It was the same thing Travis used to say, right before he told her who she could see, and where she could go, and what she could wear. It was the same tone, the concerned boyfriend tone, the one that sounded like love but felt like a cage. They were at his apartment, eating the brisket he'd promised. When Nora finally said it, "You have to stop." Marcus put down his fork. "Stop what?" "Showing up at my work. Buying me alarms, telling me where to live. I know you're trying to help, but it feels—" She stopped, swallowed. "It feels like control. And I've already been controlled. I can't do it again." The silence that followed was long. Marcus looked at his plate, at the brisket, at the wall behind her, and then back at her. His face was unreadable. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." Nora blinked. She'd expected defensiveness. She'd expected, "I'm just trying to protect you." She hadn't expected agreement. "I grew up with a dad who hit my mom," Marcus said, "and I promised myself I'd never be that guy. But I think I overcorrected. I thought if I could control every possible threat, I could keep you safe. But that's not protection. That's just a different kind of control." He paused. "I'm sorry, Nora, I won't do it again." Nora stared at him. She thought about Travis, who'd never apologized for anything, who'd said, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and meant, "I'm sorry you're crazy." She thought about the difference between, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and, "You're right. I'm sorry. Thank you," she said. And she meant it. They finished dinner. Marcus walked her to her car, and this time he didn't offer to follow her home. He just said, "Text me when you get there," and she said, "I will." And for the first time, it felt like a request, not a demand. The next day, Lila called. She was at the hospital, in the ER, and her voice was tight. "Nora, I need you to sit down. I just had a patient come in. Female, 32, multiple contusions, broken rib. Her boyfriend did it. And when I was taking her history, she mentioned an ex. His name was Travis Voss." Nora's blood went cold. "What? She dated him before you?" 6 years ago. She said he broke her rib and threatened to kill her if she left. She left anyway, moved to California, just moved back last month. And she said, Nora, she said he did the same thing to her. The texts, the following, the threats against any man who talked to her. Lila paused. "She's willing to talk to the police. She's willing to testify." "Nora, this is the evidence you need." Nora sat down on the floor of her apartment, right there in the hallway, mochi winding around her ankles. She thought about the police officer, about the TRO, about "come back when you have more evidence." She thought about the woman in the ER, about the broken rib, about the fact that Travis had done this before her and would do it again after her if nobody stopped him. "I'll meet you at the hospital," Nora said. "I want to talk to her. And then I want to call that detective. The one from the DV unit." She hung up. She stood up. She checked the locks. Once. Not 3 times, just once. And she grabbed her keys. For 3 years she'd been running. For 3 years she'd been quiet. For 3 years she'd deleted the texts and sat in the dark and hoped he'd get bored. Not anymore. The woman's name was Dana Whitfield. She was 32, a graphic designer, and she had a bruise the color of an eggplant spreading across her left side, and a cast on her wrist from where Travis had slammed it in a car door. She sat in the ER bay with a blanket around her shoulders, and looked at Nora with the particular recognition of two people who'd survived the same storm. He told me I was crazy, Dana said. Said I was imagining things. Said nobody would believe me because I was just an angry ex. Sound familiar? Nora nodded. She'd heard every word. I left him in 2019, Dana continued. Moved to San Francisco. Thought I was safe. Then 6 months ago, my mom got sick. I moved back to Denver and, she paused, laughed without humor. And there he was, at the grocery store, at my job, sitting in his car outside my apartment. It's like he never left. Did you report him? Twice. Both times they said the same thing. No evidence. No witnesses. He's very careful, you know? Never hits you where it shows. Never threatens you where someone can hear. He's a professional at making you look like the problem. Nora thought about the arm cast, about the stairs, about the texts she'd deleted. He's not careful enough, she said, because he did it to both of us. And now there are two of us telling the same story. They called Detective Carmen Alvarez from the domestic violence unit that afternoon. She came to the hospital. 44, tired eyes, a notebook full of handwriting so dense it looked like code, and she listened to both women tell their stories. She didn't interrupt. She didn't say, "I'm sure it's hard." She just took notes, and when they were done, she said, "We can file for a temporary restraining order today. Given the pattern, 2 victims, consistent MO, the recent break-in of Ms. Callahan's vehicle, I think a judge will grant it. But a TRO is temporary. To make it permanent, you need a hearing. And you need to testify." "I'll testify," Nora said. The words came out before she could think about them. Dana nodded. "Me too." Alvarez looked at them both. "Then let's get to work." The TRO was granted 2 days later. A judge signed it at 4 in the afternoon, and by 5, Nora had a piece of paper, thin, official, with a case number and a judge's signature. That said Travis Voss was to remain at least 100 yards from Nora Callahan at all times. No contact, no texts, no showing up at her work or her home, no sending friends to watch her. Nora held the paper in her hands and thought, this is it. This is the thing that's supposed to keep me safe. It didn't feel like much. She put it on her fridge, next to a magnet of mochi that Lila had given her, and she went to bed. She didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to every sound. The building settling, a car passing outside, mochi jumping on the counter, and she waited. At 2:17 in the morning, the sound came. It was glass. The sharp, unmistakable sound of glass breaking, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting her kitchen floor. Nora sat bolt upright in bed, her heart hammering, and she reached for her phone. The first call was to 911. The second was to Marcus. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't go to the kitchen. She stayed in the bedroom, door locked. Mochi under the bed hissing, and she waited. The police arrived in 8 minutes. Marcus arrived in 12. The front window was shattered. Someone had thrown a rock through it, wrapped in a piece of paper. The paper was a copy of the restraining order, torn in half, with Travis's handwriting on the back. A piece of paper won't protect you. The police officer who responded was the same young officer from the station. He looked at the rock, at the torn paper, at the shattered window, and he said, "This is different. This is a violation. We can arrest him for this." "Can you?" Nora said. Her voice was shaking. "He wasn't here. He didn't do it himself. Jake probably threw the rock. Jake Morrison." The officer checked his notebook. "We can bring him in for questioning. And if he rolls on Travis, we've got him. Either way, this is evidence. This is the kind of thing that makes a permanent restraining order stick." Marcus was standing by the broken window, looking at the glass on the floor. He hadn't said anything since he arrived. Now he turned to Nora, and his face was tight with anger, but his voice was controlled. "You're not staying here tonight," he said. "Come to my place. We'll get the window fixed tomorrow. You can't be here alone." Nora almost said no. Almost said, "I'm fine, I can stay. I don't need to leave my home." But then she looked at the broken window, at the torn restraining order, at the rock on her kitchen floor, and she said, "Okay." She packed a bag. She fed Mochi and put him in the carrier. He protested loudly, and she left the apartment with the police officer's card in her pocket and the restraining order in her bag. Marcus's apartment was in a building with a doorman and security, cameras, and a parking garage that required a key fob. It was the opposite of Nora's apartment. Secure, impersonal, the kind of place where someone couldn't just throw a rock through a window. Nora set Mochi's carrier down, and the cat immediately hid under the couch, and Nora sat on Marcus's couch and cried. Not the quiet, polite crying she did in bathrooms. The ugly kind. The kind that came from 3 years of being afraid, of deleting texts, of checking locks, of sitting in the dark, of never feeling safe anywhere. She cried until her head hurt, and her eyes were swollen, and Marcus sat beside her, not touching her, just present, and let her finish. When she was done, he handed her a glass of water and said, "Detective Alvarez called while you were packing. She wants to meet tomorrow. She says the rock and the note are exactly what she needed. She's going to push for an arrest warrant." Nora wiped her face with her sleeve. "For Travis?" "For both of them. Travis for violating the TRO and felony menacing. Jake for criminal mischief and accomplice liability. She says if Jake cooperates, they can get Travis on more charges." Nora nodded. She drank the water. She looked around Marcus's apartment, at the books on the shelf, at the cooking magazines stacked by the kitchen, at the framed photo of him and his mom and sister on the wall, and she thought, I am in a safe place. For the first time in 3 years, I am in a place where he can't reach me. It didn't feel real. It felt like a dream, the kind you wake up from and realize you're still in the dark. But she was awake, and the window was broken, and the rock was evidence, and Detective Alvarez was pushing for an arrest. And for the first time, Nora allowed herself to think something she hadn't allowed herself to think in 3 years. Maybe this is almost over. She was wrong. It wasn't almost over. It was just getting started. But for that night, in that apartment, with the door locked and the cat under the couch and Marcus in the next room, Nora slept. She slept without checking the locks. She slept without listening for footsteps. She slept, and for the first time in 1,000 days, she didn't have a single nightmare. Jake Morrison cracked in 48 hours. Detective Alvarez brought him in for questioning about the broken window. And Jake, who was many things, none of them brave, lasted about 20 minutes before he started talking. He told them everything. The texts, the surveillance, the waiting room visits, the copy of Nora's car key, the rock through the window. He told them Travis had paid him $500 to throw it. He told them Travis had said, "If she thinks a piece of paper can stop me, she's dumber than I thought." The arrest warrant for Travis was issued on a Friday morning. They picked him up at his apartment in Aurora, and he went quietly. Too quietly, Alvarez said. Like he knew it was coming and had a plan. He made bail that night. Nora found out from Alvarez, who called her at 7 in the morning, her voice tight. He's out. Bail was set at $25,000. His mom posted it. His conditions are no contact with you, no contact with Dana, stay away from your work and home. But Nora, he's out, and he's angry. Nora sat on the edge of Marcus's bed. She'd been staying there since the window, and she said, "What do we do? We wait for the preliminary hearing. It's in 3 weeks. If the judge finds probable cause, the case goes to trial, and he's looking at real time. But in the meantime," Alvarez paused, "in the meantime, I need you to be careful. Very careful. He's going to try something. He always does. He always does," Nora repeated. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Nora's life. She went to work. She trained at the gym. She stayed at Marcus's apartment. She carried the personal safety alarm on her keychain, the one Marcus had bought her, the one she'd initially resented. And now she clipped it to her bag every morning without thinking. She checked the locks. She scanned parking lots. She looked over her shoulder, and Travis stayed away. No texts. No gray Ford. No Jake in waiting rooms. Nothing. It was the silence that was worse than the threats. The kind of silence that meant he was planning, that he was waiting, that he was biding his time for something bigger. Alvarez called it the calm before. She said it was typical of abusers. They retreat. They appear to comply. And then they strike when you least expect it. She proposed a plan. "We can set up a controlled meet," she said. "You go somewhere public, somewhere he's likely to show up. We have plainclothes officers nearby. If he approaches you, if he violates the no-contact order, we arrest him on the spot. No more waiting. No more he said, she said. We catch him in the act. A controlled meet," Nora repeated. "You want me to be bait. I want you to be the one who ends this. He's not going to stop on his own, Nora. You know that. This is the fastest way to put him away before he hurts someone." Nora thought about Dana's broken rib. She thought about her own arm cast. She thought about the rock through the window. She thought about 3 years of silence and fear and deleted texts. "I'll do it," she said. Marcus was furious when she told him. Not loud furious, quiet furious, the kind that made his jaw tight and his hands clench. "No, absolutely not. It's too dangerous. It's my decision, Marcus. He could have a weapon. He could be waiting. Nora, he's unhinged. I know what he is. I lived with him for 4 years. I know exactly what he's capable of." She stood up, faced him, and her voice was steady in a way that surprised even her. "You told me once that nobody is coming to save me. That I have to save myself. This is me saving myself. Don't take that away from me." Marcus stared at her. The anger drained out of his face, replaced by something else. Respect maybe, or fear, or both. "Okay," he said. "Okay, but I'm coming with you. Not as your protector, as your backup. If something goes wrong, if the cops aren't there..." "No," Nora said. Alvarez said no civilians. "If you're there and Travis sees you, he won't approach. This has to look like I'm alone." Marcus's jaw tightened again, but he nodded. "Okay, but I'm parked 2 blocks away. If you call me, I'm there in 30 seconds. 30 seconds, Nora agreed. The operation was set for a Tuesday night. Nora would go to the King Soopers on Colorado Boulevard, the grocery store where Travis had shown up 3 times in the last year, where he knew she shopped, where the parking lot was large and poorly lit. She'd go in alone, buy a few things, come out. Plainclothes officers would be in the store and in the parking lot. If Travis approached, they'd move in. Nora sat in her car in the grocery store parking lot at 8:45, her hands on the steering wheel, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She checked the rearview mirror. No gray Ford, no Jake, nothing. She got out of the car. She walked into the store. She grabbed a basket. She walked the aisles. Cat food, milk, bread, the things she always bought. And she was aware of every person around her. The old lady comparing cereal brands. The teenager scrolling on his phone by the produce. The plainclothes officer pretending to read a magazine in the magazine aisle. Alvarez had pointed them out to her earlier. 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female, both in street clothes, both wearing earpieces. She checked out. She paid with her card. She walked out of the store, bags in hand, toward her car in the far corner of the lot. The night was cold. The parking lot lights flickered. Nora's heels clicked on the asphalt, and she was aware of every sound. Her own breathing, the hum of the refrigeration units, a car door slamming somewhere in the distance. She was 10 feet from her car when she saw him. He was behind a parked SUV, stepping out into the light, and he wasn't alone. Jake was with him, and Travis was holding something. A metal pipe, Nora realized. The kind you buy at a hardware store for $20. He'd been drinking. She could see it in his stance, in the way he swayed slightly, in the way his eyes were too bright. "Nora," he said. His voice was slurred, angry, the voice she remembered from the worst nights. "You thought you could get rid of me? You thought that cop bitch and your boyfriend could protect you?" Nora's body did what it had been trained to do. She dropped the bags. She stepped back, creating distance. She reached for the alarm on her keychain. "Stay back," she said. Her voice was loud, louder than she'd ever used it in public. "Stay back," Travis laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You think yelling helps? Nobody's coming." "Nobody!" He took a step forward. Nora pressed the alarm. It went off, a shrill, piercing sound that cut through the parking lot night, and Travis flinched. And in that flinch, Nora saw her opening. She ran, not toward the store, toward the open lot, toward the lights, toward where she knew the officers were. She ran, and she heard Travis behind her, shouting, running, the pipe clanging against the asphalt. And then she heard the other sounds, the officers shouting, "Police! Get on the ground!" The sound of a taser, the thud of a body hitting pavement. She stopped running. She turned around. Travis was on the ground, face down, hands cuffed behind his back. Jake was against a car, hands up, being frisked by the female officer. 2 more patrol cars had arrived, lights flashing, and the parking lot was suddenly full of blue and red. Marcus was there too. She didn't know when he'd arrived, but he was standing by her car, his face white, his hands clenched. He saw her looking and he didn't run to her. He didn't crowd her. He just stood there and mouthed, "Are you okay?" Nora nodded. She was shaking. She was crying, but she was standing. Alvarez walked over to her, her notebook in hand, and said, "He's done, Nora. Felony menacing, violation of a restraining order, possession of a weapon, resisting arrest. He's not making bail this time. It's over." Nora looked at Travis on the ground. He was yelling, struggling, calling her names, and the officers were lifting him up and putting him in the back of a patrol car, and the door closed. And suddenly the parking lot was quiet, except for the hum of the car engines and the sound of Nora's own breathing. "It's over," she repeated. And she didn't believe it. Not yet, but she wanted to. Travis didn't make bail. The judge denied it, citing pattern of escalating violence and clear threat to the community. And Nora found out from Alvarez while she was sitting in Marcus's apartment eating cereal for dinner. "Good," she said, and she meant it, but she also felt nothing. No relief, no triumph, just the flat, empty feeling that comes after you've been afraid for so long you forget what not being afraid feels like. The preliminary hearing was in 3 weeks. Alvarez said it would be straightforward. They had the rock, the note, Jake's statement, the grocery store incident, Dana's testimony, 3 years of text messages Nora had finally stopped deleting. The prosecution was confident, but Nora would have to testify. She would have to stand in a courtroom under oath and tell a judge everything Travis had done to her, in front of Travis himself. "I don't know if I can do it," she told Lila on the phone that night. "Yes, you do," Lila said. "You've already done the hard part. You left him. You reported him. You stood in a parking lot and screamed at a man with a pipe. Testifying is just talking. And you're good at talking when you're not scared. I'm always scared. Then talk while you're scared. That's what brave people do." Nora started training harder. She went to the gym 5 days a week instead of 3. Coach Ray noticed and said, "You're not training for a fight. You're training for a courtroom. Stand up straight. Breathe. You're not here to beat him. You're here to be heard." She practiced her testimony with Marcus. He sat across from her at his kitchen table and played the role of Travis's lawyer, asking the questions she feared most. "Why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you call the police? Are you sure these texts are from him? Isn't it possible you're exaggerating?" She answered everyone. Her voice shook the first few times. By the end of the week, it didn't. The night before the hearing, she couldn't sleep. She lay in Marcus's bed. He was on the couch, giving her space, and stared at the ceiling. Mochi was curled on her chest, purring, and she thought about the first time Travis had hit her. It had been a slap, nothing serious, and he'd cried afterward and said he'd never do it again, and she'd believed him because she was 23 and in love, and didn't know that never again was the first lie. She thought about the arm cast, about the stairs, about the night Lila had banged on her door and said, "We're leaving now." And Nora had said, "I can't. He'll find me." And Lila had said, "Then we'll make sure he can't hurt you when he does." She thought about Dana in the ER, about the broken rib, about the fact that there might be other women before Dana, women after Nora, if nobody stopped him. She got out of bed. She went to the living room. Marcus was on the couch reading and he looked up and said, "Can't sleep?" "No." "Want to talk?" "No, I just want to sit here." She sat down next to him. He put his arm around her, not tight, not possessive, just there, and they sat in silence for a long time. And Nora thought, this is what safe feels like. I'd forgotten. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses. Travis was at the defense table, in a jail uniform, his hands cuffed, left. He looked smaller than Nora remembered, paler, thinner, the swagger gone. When she walked in, he looked at her, and for a second she saw the old Travis, the charming one, the one who'd brought her flowers and said she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. And then it was gone, replaced by the cold, angry stare she knew too well. She took the stand. She raised her right hand. She swore to tell the truth. Alvarez asked the questions. Nora answered. She told them about the 4 years, the yelling, the controlling, the isolation from her friends, the time he'd smashed her phone because she'd texted a male coworker. She told them about the stairs, the cast, the night she'd left. She told them about the 3 years, the texts, the cars, Jake in the waiting rooms, the men who'd been threatened. She told them about the rock through the window, the copy of the restraining order, the grocery store parking lot, the pipe. Her voice shook once. When she described the arm cast, when she said, "He pushed me down the stairs and I heard it snap," and Travis's lawyer pounced. "Miss Callahan," he said, standing up, adjusting his suit. "You claim my client pushed you down the stairs. Yet you never reported this incident to police. You never sought a medical report." "I had a cast," Nora said. "The hospital has records. And you continued to see my client for another 6 months after this alleged incident. Doesn't that suggest that perhaps the incident was less severe than you're describing? Or that perhaps it didn't happen at all?" Nora looked at the lawyer. She looked at Travis, who was smiling. A small, confident smile. The smile of a man who thought he was winning. She thought about Coach Ray. "You're not here to beat him. You're here to be heard." "I stayed because I was afraid," she said. Her voice was steady now. "I stayed because he told me if I left, he'd find me. I stayed because I had no money, no job, no family in Denver, and I believed him when he said nobody would help me. I stayed because that's what abused people do. They stay, not because they want to, because they're terrified." The courtroom was quiet. The lawyer's smile faded. Travis's smile faded. The judge leaned forward slightly, and Nora knew, she just knew, that the judge had heard her. The cross-examination continued for another 20 minutes. The lawyer tried to paint her as angry, as vindictive, as a woman scorned. He asked about the texts. Had she saved all of them? Had she ever responded to them? Had she ever initiated contact? Nora answered every question honestly. She didn't deny that she'd been angry. She didn't deny that she'd responded to some texts, begging him to leave her alone. She didn't deny any of it. When it was over, the judge called a recess. Nora stepped down from the stand. Her legs were shaking. Marcus was in the gallery, and he gave her a small nod. Just a nod. No big gesture. No "I'm proud of you" in front of everyone. And that was enough. Alvarez found her in the hallway. They don't know he cooks brisket and reads psychology books and apologizes when he's wrong. They see a 6'5" fighter and they think they know the story. Dana testified next. She told her story. The broken rib, the car door, the threats, the years of silence. She was calm, composed, and her testimony matched Nora's in every detail. The same patterns, the same language, the same "you're nothing without me." The jury took notes. Jake testified after lunch. He was nervous, sweating, and he told them about the texts Travis had sent him, the money, the instructions to watch Nora, the rock through the window, the pipe in the parking lot. Travis's lawyer tried to discredit him. "You're a convicted felon, aren't you, Mr. Morrison? You've lied to police before, haven't you?" But Jake held firm. "I'm not proud of what I did," he said, "but I'm telling the truth now. He told me to do it. All of it." The defense called one witness, Travis's mother. She cried on the stand. She said her son was a good boy, that Nora was a troubled woman, that it was all a misunderstanding. The jury listened politely. Nobody believed her. Closing arguments were the next morning. Alvarez spoke for the prosecution, calm, methodical, laying out the evidence like a roadmap. The texts, the witnesses, the pattern, the escalation, the rock, the pipe, the 2 women telling the same story. "This isn't about a bad breakup," she said. "This is about a man who believes he owns women, who believes he can threaten, stalk, and assault them with impunity. And today, you have the chance to tell him he's wrong." Travis's lawyer gave his closing, heartfelt, performative, about reasonable doubt and false accusations and the danger of believing he said she said. Nora listened, and she didn't feel angry. She felt tired of the story, tired of telling it, tired of being defined by what Travis had done to her. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Nora waited in the hallway. Marcus was there, and Lila, and Dana, and they sat on the hard plastic chairs and didn't talk. Marcus held Nora's hand, not tightly, just holding it, and she let him. The bailiff called them back in. The jury foreperson stood up. "On the charge of felony menacing, we find the defendant guilty." Nora's breath caught. "On the charge of violation of a restraining order, guilty." Lila squeezed her arm. "On the charge of stalking, guilty." Travis was standing now, his face red, his lawyer whispering to him. "On the charge of third-degree assault, referring to the incident involving the stairs, guilty." The courtroom erupted. Not loudly. The judge banged the gavel. But there were gasps, and Dana was crying, and Lila was whispering, "Oh my God, oh my God." And Marcus's hand tightened around Nora's, and Nora just sat there, feeling nothing and everything at once. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks. Travis was let out, and he looked at Nora one last time, and his face was not angry anymore. It was blank, empty, the face of a man who just realized he'd lost. Nora walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was bright, too bright, and she had to blink several times. Marcus was beside her, and Lila was hugging her, and Dana was crying and saying, We did it. We actually did it. And Nora stood in the middle of it all and thought, it's over. It's actually over. And then her phone buzzed. She looked at it. A text from a number she didn't recognize. She opened it. This isn't over. When I get out, I'll find you. I'll always find you. Nora stared at the text. She showed it to Alvarez, who said, we'll trace it. It's probably Jake or one of his friends. Don't let it get to you. But it did get to her. Because she knew Travis, and she knew that even in a jail cell, even convicted, even facing years in prison, he would find a way to reach her. The question was, would she let him define her life from behind bars? Or would she finally truly be free? The texts didn't stop. They came from different numbers. Burner phones, Nora assumed. The kind you buy at a gas station for $20 and throw away after one use. The messages were always the same. I'll find you. You can't hide. Nobody can protect you forever. Sometimes they were more specific. I know you're still seeing that fighter. Tell him I'll see him when I get out. Sometimes they were just a photo. Her apartment building, her car, the clinic entrance, taken from a distance. No face, no context, just the quiet threat of being watched. Alvarez traced as many as she could. Most led to dead ends. One led to Jake's cousin, who was charged with witness tampering. But the texts kept coming, like water through a cracked dam. You plug one hole, another opens. Nora's therapist. She'd started seeing one after the trial. A woman named Dr. Chen, recommended by Coach Ray of all people, called it post-traumatic stress. She said the texts were triggers, that they activated the same fear response as actual danger, even when Nora was safe. She said it would get better with time, with therapy, with learning to separate the memory of fear from the reality of safety. Nora didn't feel better. She felt raw, exposed, like a nerve that had been cut and was still trying to heal. Marcus was patient. He didn't say, it'll be okay, or just ignore them. He said, that sounds terrifying, and do you want to talk about it, and I'm here. He'd learned, after the protector fight, that being present was more useful than being a shield. But Nora could see the toll it was taking on him. He'd check his phone more often. He'd ask, did you get any today? Before he said hello. He'd started parking his car where he could see her apartment door. He wasn't controlling her anymore, but he was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. And Nora hated that she'd brought this into his life. One night, after a particularly graphic text, one that described what Travis would do to Marcus when he got out, Nora said, maybe we should take a break. Marcus put down his fork. They were at his apartment, eating the pasta he'd made, and the room went very still. A break, he repeated. Not forever. Just until sentencing. Until I know how long he's in for. Until the texts stop. I can't keep doing this to you. I can't keep making you wait for a man who's in prison to threaten you. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, you're not making me do anything. I'm here because I choose to be, and if you need space, I'll give you space. But I want you to know, it's not because of the texts. It's because you asked. That's the difference. Nora felt the tears come. I'm so tired, Marcus. I'm so tired of being afraid. I know, he said, and you don't have to be afraid alone. But if being with me makes it harder, then we take a break. No pressure. No timeline. Just whatever you need. They took a break. Nora moved back to her apartment full time. She didn't see Marcus for 3 weeks. They texted occasionally. Nothing heavy, just how was work, and Mochi knocked over a plant again. And it was strange and quiet. And Nora missed him more than she wanted to admit. But she also used the time. She went to therapy twice a week. She trained at the gym. She started a new project at the clinic, a community outreach program for low-income pet owners, and threw herself into it. She spent time with Lila and Dana. She learned to be alone without being lonely. Sentencing day came on a Tuesday in March. Denver was still cold, the kind of cold that lingered in your bones. And Nora wore the same navy dress she'd worn to the trial. Practical, professional, the kind of dress that said I am serious and I am not afraid. The courtroom was full. Dana was there. Lila was there. Marcus was there, sitting in the back, not the front, giving her space. Travis was let in, thinner now, paler, his hair grown out. And he didn't look at Nora. He stared at the table in front of him. The judge read the sentence. 4 years in Colorado Department of Corrections, with eligibility for parole after 2. Consecutive sentences on the stalking and menacing charges, concurrent on the assault. Credit for time served. 4 years. 2 with good behavior. Nora had hoped for more. She'd wanted 10, 15 life, but 4 was something. 4 was real. 4 meant he wouldn't be in a parking lot with a pipe next month. Travis was let out. He didn't look at her. The door closed. The gavel came down, and it was over. Nora walked out of the courtroom. The hallway was the same one she'd stood in after the verdict. The same bright lights. The same hard plastic chairs. This time she didn't feel numb. She felt something else. Something she couldn't name. Relief, maybe. Or grief. Or both. Marcus found her by the vending machines. He didn't hug her. He didn't say, I'm proud of you. He just said, 4 years. That's real. 2 with good behavior, Nora said. 2 years is a long time, and when he gets out, he'll be on parole. If he contacts you, he goes back. You know that, right? I know. They stood there for a moment, in the fluorescent light of the courthouse hallway, and Nora thought, I should say something. I should tell him I miss him, that the break was good but it's over, that I want to try again. But before she could, he said, I'll be at the gym tonight if you want to train. No pressure. Just, if you want. "I'll be there," she said. He nodded. He walked away. Nora watched him go, 6'5", broad shoulders, the scar above his eyebrow, and she thought, he's not my savior. He never was. He's just a man who showed up and listened and stayed. And that's enough. She went home. She fed Mochi. She checked the locks. Once. Just once. And she sat on the couch with the lights on, and she didn't delete the texts anymore. She saved them, all of them, in a folder labeled evidence, and she didn't read them. She just let them be there, because they were evidence, and evidence was power, and she was done giving her power away. The next text came at 9 that night. Same kind of message. Same threat. Nora looked at it, saved it to the folder, and put her phone down. She didn't feel afraid. Not this time. She felt angry maybe, or resolved, or just tired, but the kind of tired that comes after you fought a long fight and know you've won. Even if the scars are still there. She picked up her phone. She texted Marcus. "Training tomorrow?" His reply came in 10 seconds. Always. Nora smiled. It was a small smile, just one corner of her mouth, the kind Marcus would have recognized. She put the phone down. She turned off the lights. She went to bed, and for the first time in 3 years, she slept through the night without a single nightmare. 6 months later, Denver was in that strange, beautiful window between winter and spring. The snow was mostly gone. The trees were thinking about budding, and the air smelled like wet earth and possibility. Nora walked to work from her apartment, a 10-minute walk through Highland, and she didn't check over her shoulder. Not because she'd forgotten, she would never forget, but because the checking had stopped being a reflex and started being a choice. She still got texts. Not as many, maybe one a month, from a new number, the same threats. She saved them all to the evidence folder. She sent them to Alvarez, who logged them and said, "He's getting sloppy. His friends are running out of burner phones." Nora didn't let them ruin her day. She read them, saved them, and moved on. Travis was in prison. 2 years in, 2 to go, and the text had slowed because his access to phones was limited. And the friends who'd been sending them were getting tired of being charged with witness tampering. Jake was in rehab, court-ordered, and had sent Nora a letter, handwritten, misspelled, apologetic, that she'd read once, and then put in the evidence folder too. Not because she forgave him, but because it was evidence of a different kind. Evidence that people could change. Even people who'd done terrible things. Nora had changed too. She'd been promoted at the clinic, lead vet tech, a title that came with a small raise and a bigger office with a window. She'd started the community outreach program, and it was growing. Free vaccine clinics in low-income neighborhoods, a pet food bank, a partnership with the local shelter. She was good at it. She was good at her job. She was good at her life. She trained at the gym 4 times a week. She wasn't a fighter. She would never be a fighter. But she could defend herself. She did deserve it. She was learning that. One Saturday in June, she and Lila and Dana went hiking in Red Rocks. The trail was steep, the sun was hot, and Nora was out of breath by the first overlook, but she kept going. At the top, they sat on a rock and drank water and looked out at the red rock formations and the Denver skyline in the distance. And Lila said, "Remember when you wouldn't leave your apartment?" "I remember," Nora said. "Remember when you checked the locks 3 times?" "I remember." "Remember when you deleted every text?" "I remember." Nora smiled. "I also remember when you showed up at my door with a U-Haul and a baseball bat and said, 'We're leaving now.'" Lila laughed. "I still have that bat." Dana was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He texted me last week. From prison. Said he was sorry. Said he'd changed. What did you do?" "I deleted it. I didn't save it. I didn't send it to the police. I just deleted it because it's not my problem anymore. And then I went for a run, and I didn't think about him for the rest of the day." She paused. "That's the first time that's happened." In 6 years, Nora put her arm around Dana. Lila put her arm around both of them. They sat on the rock, 3 women who'd survived the same man, and they looked out at the view, and nobody said anything for a long time. On the drive home, Nora's phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. She looked at it. The same kind of message. The same threat. She didn't save it this time. She didn't forward it to Alvarez. She just deleted it. 1 swipe, gone, and put the phone down. Lila, driving, glanced over. "Another one? Another one. You okay?" Nora looked out the window at the red rocks receding in the rearview mirror, at the highway, at the Denver skyline getting closer, and she thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. The one who sat in the dark, who checked the locks 3 times, who deleted every text and pretended it didn't matter. She thought about the woman she was now, the one who hiked Red Rocks, who ran a community program, who could break a wrist hold and scream loud enough to stop a man with a pipe, who loved and was loved and didn't apologize for either. "I'm okay," she said. And she meant it, really meant it, for the first time. That night, she was in her apartment. Marcus was at the gym. Mochi was on the couch. The lights were on, and she heard a noise outside. A car door. Footsteps. Something falling over in the hallway. Her body tensed. The old reflex, the one that used to make her reach for the phone, for the locks, for the dark, kicked in. But then she paused. She breathed. She listened. It was the neighbors. A couple, arguing, dropping groceries, the kind of ordinary noise that happens in apartment buildings every night. Not Travis. Not Jake. Not a threat. Just life. Nora exhaled. She went to the door. She checked the peephole. Once, just once, and saw the neighbor fumbling with her groceries, and she opened the door and said, "Need help?" The neighbor, an older woman, maybe 70, with a walker and too many grocery bags, looked up and smiled. "Oh, honey, that would be wonderful. I'm Mrs. Goldberg. I just moved in next door." Nora helped her carry the groceries in. They talked for 5 minutes. Mrs. Goldberg had a cat too, a tabby named Morris, and she loved the clinic on 32nd. And wasn't the weather lovely? And Nora walked back to her apartment and she thought, this is it. This is the life I was afraid to live. The ordinary, the messy, the beautiful, the loud, the quiet, the mine. She closed the door. She locked it once. Just once. She turned around. Mochi was on the couch watching her. Marcus would be home soon. The texts would come again, probably. Travis would get out in 2 years, probably. The fear might never fully go away, but Nora was standing. She was standing in her apartment, in her life, and she wasn't hiding in the dark anymore. She was in the light, and she was never going back. She picked up Mochi. She sat on the couch. She turned on the TV. She waited for Marcus to come home. And for the first time in her life, Nora Callahan felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be.